morning students. Hope you are all fine. Today we are going to see chapter 5 separation of substances in grade 6 science NCERT book. In this chapter we already discussed about mixture, reason for separation of mixture and methods of separation. First we will revise mixture. What is mixture? A mixture is a substance that is made up of two or more substances. A mixture is a substance that is made up of two or more substances. Example for mixtures are air, tea, milk, tap water. These all are example for mixture. We already know a mixture is a substance that is made up of two or more substances. For example, milk. Milk is a mixture which is made up of water, cream, fats and other nutrients. And another one example is air. Air contains gases like oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide and then some other gases. So, these all are example for mixture. Next we'll see types of mixture. There are two types of mixture. One is a homogeneous mixture, another one is heterogeneous mixture. These two already we discussed. What is homogeneous mixture? Mixtures in which the particles of the substances present cannot be seen are called homogeneous mixture. Homogeneous mixture means mixture in which the particles of the substances present cannot be seen are called homogeneous mixture. The particles of substance present in mixture cannot be seen are called homogeneous mixture. Can you list out the example for homogeneous mixture? Sugar solution or salt solution. We cannot see the sugar or salt particles in solution of sugar or solution of salt. That's why this solution of sugar or solution of salt are called as a homogeneous mixture. Next one, heterogeneous mixture. What does mean by heterogeneous mixture? We already discussed this one. The substances present can be seen in mixture are called heterogeneous mixture. The substances which are present can be seen easily in mixture are called heterogeneous mixture. Example for heterogeneous mixture are chalk in water, oil in water. These two are best example for heterogeneous mixture. Next we are going to see methods of separation. Students, can you list out the methods of separation? We already discussed this one in our last class. Depending on the types of mixture, different methods of separation are used. Now we'll see methods of separation. Hand picking, threshing, winnowing, sieving, sedimentation, decantation, filtration, churning, evaporation and distillation. These all are methods of separation. First we'll see hand picking. We already discussed this topic in our last class. What is hand picking? This one is a simplest method of separating unwanted materials from the useful ones. Separation of unwanted materials from the useful ones. This method is used only when the unwanted materials is present in smaller quantity. The unwanted materials is present in small quantity, size, shape or color of the unwanted material is different from that of the useful one. This one we call it as a hand picking. The unwanted substance can be separated by hand picking. Next one, threshing. The process of separating grains from stalks of harvested crops is called threshing. How they are separating these grains from stalks? Is by beating the stalks against a hot surface. The process of separating grains from stalks of harvested crops by beating the stalks against hot surface is called threshing. And nowadays this threshing is done by threshing machine. Farmers use this method for separating wheat grains from husk and hay. What is this process? Yes, this one is winnowing. The process of separation of grain from husk and hay with the help of wind is called winnowing. In this process, farmer drop the mixture of wheat and husk from a height. The lighter husk are carried by the wind and small distance away. The wheat grains fall almost vertically to form a separate heap are called winnowing. Next one, sieving. Sieving is a method of separating substances of different size using a sieve. By using sieve, we are separating substances. This method we call it as a sieving. In this method, we use sieve to separate the substance. The pore size in the sieve depend on the size of the particles of the component to be separated. A sieve having fine pores is used to separate undesirable substances in flour. A sieve having large pores is used to separate stones from sand. Now we will enter to today's topic. In our today's class, we are going to discuss about separation of insoluble solids from liquids. First one, sedimentation and decantation. Sedimentation. It is used to separate insoluble solids from solid liquid mixture. What is sedimentation? A process of settling down of heavier solids in water when the mixture is allowed to stand undisturbed for some time is called sedimentation. Sedimentation is a process of settling down of heavier solids in water when the mixture is allowed to stand undisturbed for some time is called sedimentation. For example, rice and pulses usually contain small stones and dust particles. Rice and pulses usually contain small stones and dust particles. After removing small stones by hand, water is added to the pulses. The pulses being heavier settle down. The pulses are heavier substances, so they are settled down. while water with dissolved impurities form the upper layer. The pulses being heavier, they settle down, while the water with dissolved impurities form the upper layer. This is called sedimentation. Settling of the heavier and insoluble substances at the bottom of the vessels when water is added is called sedimentation. Settling of the heavier and insoluble substances at the bottom of the vessel when water is added is called sedimentation. Next one, decandation. Decandation is the process of pouring out the top layer of liquid into a separate container. Decandation is the process of pouring out the liquid without disturbing the sediment. Decandation is the process of pouring out the liquid without disturbing the sediment is called decandation. Let's see an activity. Take a mixture of sand and water in a beaker. Take a mixture of sand and water in a beaker. Leave the beaker undisturbed for some times. Leave the beaker undisturbed for some times. What will happen? Yes, we can find that the sand settles down while the water forms the upper layer. So, sand settles in the bottom of the beaker. This one is a sedimentation process. And water forms the upper layer, isn't it? That water poured out into another beaker. That one we call it as a decandation. Sand particles settles down in a bottom of the beaker. That one is a sedimentation. And the water, upper layer of water poured out into another beaker. That one we call it as a decandation. The upper layer poured into another container without disturbing the sediment. Without disturbing the sediment. This process of pouring out the upper water is called decandation. Sand particles settles down in the bottom of the beaker is called sedimentation. Decandation can also be used to separate liquids that do not mix well. Decantation can also be used to separate liquids that do not mix well. For example, if an oil and water mixture is allowed to stand undisturbed, oil and water form two distinct layers. Oil can be separated from water by decantation. One thing we should remember in it, decantation is not a very exact process of separation because the liquid is not poured out gently. It can carry the other substances along with it. What is it? The liquid is not poured out gently. It can carry the other substances along with it. Next process, filtration. Next one, filtration. Did you hear this word? Yes. Filtering the tea by using a strainer in our day-to-day life. Filtration is a process of separating insoluble solids from a liquid mixture by using filter. Filtration is a process of separating insoluble solids from a liquid mixture by using a filter. In this method, the mixture is allowed to pass through a filter. See this picture. There is a filter paper unfolded, and we are going to first fold and then second fold. It's become a cone shape. After the second fold, it's become a cone shape. That one we used as a filter. The filter paper used as a filter. This filter paper or filter medium with fine pores. It have a fine pores. The insoluble solid particles are retained by the filter, and the clear liquid is collected as the filtrate. Filtrate means, yes, that clear water. Is that one collected in a one beaker or any other container. In this filtration, size of the pores in the filter is very important. The size of the pores in the filter is very important. For a good filter, the pores in the filter should be smaller than the size of the particles to be removed. For an example, when we prepare tea is poured over a strainer. The tea leaves remains in the strainer and tea gets collected in the cup below. This process of separation of tea leaves from the prepared tea is called filtration. In a filtration process, when a mixture is poured into filter, so that one is a for example tea, that one is a poured in a filter. The liquid passes through the filter and solid particles remains on top of the filter. This process is known as filtration. And that solid substances left behind is called the residue. What is it? Yes, residue. The solid substance left behind is called the residue. Now we'll see some examples of filtration and the types of filter used. When the mixture of mud and water is poured on a filter paper, the clear liquid passes through and collected in container at the bottom. The mud remains behind on the filter paper. Fruit pulp and seeds can be separated from the fruit juice by using a sieve. Another one example is tea leaves are separated from prepared tea using a strainer. Nowadays we are using face mask. Why we are using that one? Yes, to filter out the air. Layers of very fine filters trap harmful substances and only clean air is left through. So that we are nowadays using mask. Compared with the decandation, this one is the very efficient method of separation. Let's see a difference between decandation and filtration. First one, decandation. The liquid is separated by gently pouring out the top layer of the liquid into another container. The liquid is separated by gently pouring out the top layer of the liquid into another container. In filtration process, part of a mixture is separated by pouring through the filter or sieve. In a filtration process, we are using filter or sieve. In a decandation, we gently pouring the top layer of liquid to another container. And next one, the dissolved impurities pass through the liquid in decandation process and the solids remains in the container. In filtration process, the solid substances is left behind on the filter. It's on the filter. The liquid collected in the container. Decandation can be used to separate the substances or impurities that dissolve in water. Filtration used to separate solids that do not dissolve in water. Example for filtration: separating dust or soil particles from pulses. An example for filtration: separating tea leaves from prepared tea. These are the difference between decandation and filtration. Next one, loading. This is also one kind of separation method. In a liquid, the suspended particles of a solid are very fine. The particles are very fine means they take a long time for settling down. For example, in a muddy water, that muds are very fine. So that muds if the muds want to settle down means it's take long time. Loading is speed up the process of sedimentation by making the particles heavier. How they are speed up the sedimentation? Yes, by making the particles heavier. Alum which is a solid and soluble in water used to load the suspended particles of clay in the water. That means that muddy water contain clay, no, that clay. So this alum is a solid and it's soluble in water used to load the clay in the water. By using this alum, suspended particles become heavier and settle down. Do you know one thing? Rain is a good example of loading process. Rain is a good example of loading process. Raindrops remove dust and other solid particles from the air. Raindrops load particles suspended in the air and bring them to the ground. How it's act as a load? Yes, raindrops load particles suspended in the air and bring them to the ground. So rain cleans the air by the process of loading. Loading is a process of fine particles of clay or any other mixture settles down very slowly. That fine particles can be made to settle faster by dissolving a small quantity of alum in muddy water. This method is called a loading. When alum is added to muddy water, the fine particles get loaded with alum particles and form a layer. This makes them to settle down faster. Next one, churning or centrifugation. This is a method of separating the lighter substances from the heavier ones. This is a method of separating the lighter substances from the heavier ones by churning or rotating the mixture at a very high speed. How they are separating this one means by churning or rotating the mixture at a very high speed. Churning is a method of separating the lighter substances from the heavier ones by churning or rotating the mixture at very high speed. Do you have any guess? It's very common method at our home. Yes, to separate butter from the cream. Cream is churned at high speed. On churning, the butter particles separate and being lighter come on top of the liquid See this picture. When we are churned, it's that lighter particle of butter come on the top of the liquid. This one we call it as a churning or centrifugation. Churning or centrifugation is the method of separating the lighter substances from the heavier one. By churning or rotating the mixture at very high speed. Next one, evaporation. Evaporation. Evaporation is a method to obtain a solid substances dissolved in liquid by evaporating the water in the mixture. Listen it. Evaporation is a method to obtain a solid substances dissolved in liquid by evaporating the water in the mixture. Evaporation takes place at room temperature. This one takes place in room temperature. But it is much faster when the water is heated. It's much faster when the water is heated. When the mixture is heated, till the water evaporates, all the water evaporates in the air. When the mixture is heated, till all the water evaporates in the air, the dissolved substances only left behind as a solid residue. And evaporation also defined as the process of changing a liquid into a gas is called evaporation. The changing the liquid into a gas is called evaporation. How this liquid change into a gas? Yes, by heating process. When we are heating a liquid, it's become gas. This process we also called as a evaporation. Evaporation is used to separate solids dissolved in liquid. Students, let me ask a question. How salt is obtained? Do you have any guess? Yes, salt is obtained from seawater. How salt is obtained from seawater? Yes, through evaporation process. Seawater is mainly a solution of table salt and water. The seawater is blocked and collected in a evaporation pond. Evaporation pond means, yes, salt pans. The water is blocked and collected in evaporation ponds. When the water evaporates by heating by the sunlight, heating means by the sunlight, the salt remains in the ponds. The salt is collected and sent into the factory for further process. After evaporation, we are collecting the salt from the salt pans. Let's see an activity for evaporation process. Let's see an activity for evaporation process. Take a beaker containing some water. Add a teaspoon of salt in it. Take a beaker containing some water. Add a teaspoon of salt in it and dissolve it with a glass rod. Keep the beaker on a stand. And heat it. What will happen? Yes, the mixture will boil. After boiling, what will happen? Do you have any guess? Yes, the water gets evaporate. Then only salt is left behind. The process of changing a liquid into a gas is called evaporation. Next one, condensation process. What is condensation? Yes, the process in which a gas changes back to its liquid state. Is called condensation. This condensation process is just opposite of evaporation. We can see tiny water droplets, that dew, on the leaves of a plants and on the mirrors of vehicle. We are seeing, no? Yes. These kind of water droplets are formed by the process of condensation. How these are formed is this occur when the water vapor present in the air comes in contact with the cold surface. The water vapor which are present in the air contains with the cold surface of any object and then cools down to form these dew and water droplets. Let's see an activity. Put the salt solution in metal kettle. Heat it till the steam starts coming out from the kettle. Take a frying pan with a handle and put some ice in it. Take a frying pan with a candle and put some ice in it. Hold the pan above the spout as shown in the figure. See this figure? That frying pan, hold the above the spout. What will happen? Yes, water droplets being formed at the bottom of the pan. This is because when the hot steam comes in contact with the cold bottom of the pan, it condenses to form pure water. Pure water can be collected in a beaker kept below the frying pan. After the water from the salt solution has evaporated and we can get pure water in the beaker and salt will be left behind in the kettle. Next one, distillation. Distillation is a method to obtain pure water from a solution through the two processes. One is evaporating the solution and then cooling the water vapor. Take a impure solution and heat of solution. Water vapors captured, cool or condensation of water vapor and collecting the pure water. For this one, the changing of water into water vapor on heating is called evaporation. The changing back of water vapor into liquid water on cooling is called condensation. See this picture. Water in a round bottom flask is heated and water gets evaporated by heating. That water vapor reach the condenser. See this picture. Condenser is there. Condenser contain cool water. Condenser contain cool water. When the water vapor pass through this condenser, that vapor become a water droplets. The water become a water droplets, and then that pure water collected on that beaker. This is a process of distillation. Next we will see difference between evaporation and distillation. Difference between evaporation and distillation. First one, evaporation. Water is evaporated from the solution to obtain the solid substances. Water is evaporated from the solution to obtain the solid substances. In a distillation, water is evaporated from the solution and then cooled to obtain pure water. This one used to get a solid substance, and this one is used to, distillation is used to get a pure water. In evaporation process, water vapor is lost to the atmosphere. In distillation process, water vapor is not lost. It is cooled or condensed to obtain pure water. An example for evaporation, salt is obtained from seawater. An example for distillation is pure water is obtained from impure tap water. Next one, solution. Have you ever noticed the preparation of sugar syrup or salt solution? Yes. We add a sugar to water and mix them. Sugar in the water disappears after some times. This is because sugar dissolves in water to form a sugar solution. Sugar dissolves in water to form a sugar solution. Here, sugar is the solute and the substance in which the solute dissolves, that is a water, is a solvent. Sugar is a solute and water is a solvent. Which dissolves in water are called solute. Which dissolves in water are called solute, and water is a solvent. Do you know one thing? Water is called as a universal solvent. Do you know the reason? Because water can dissolve a large number of substances in it. Water can dissolve a large number of substances in it. So it's called as a universal solvent. And which are the substances dissolved in water are called solute. Water is a solvent, and which are the substances dissolved in water are called solute. And the solute dissolve in the solvent to form a solution. The solute dissolves in the solvent to form a solution. Next one, solubility. Next one, solubility. What is mean by solubility? Yes, the property of a substances to dissolve in a given liquid is called the solubility of substances. All substances do not dissolve in water. For example, when salt is added to water, it dissolves completely in water. But when we add a sand in water, it's not dissolve in water. Do you know one thing? Substances which are dissolved in water are called soluble substances. Substances which are dissolved in water are called soluble substances, and substances which do not dissolve in water are called insoluble substances. Next we'll see different method of separation with example. Small stones and insects from rice and pulses are separated by hand picking method. How we are separating this one? Yes, by the shape, color and size of the stones and insects are different and visible to the eyes. By that way we are using hand picking to separating this one. Next one, wheat and paddy stalks filled with grains. This one is separated by threshing. Another one is a winnowing method. Mixture of grain and husk is separated by winnowing method. Heavier and lighter components of a mixture are separated by wind or blowing air. Next one is a sieving method. The mixture of wheat flour and bran is separated by sieving method. By this process, wheat passes through the sieve and bran remains in the sieve. Next one, sedimentation and decandation method. Dust particles in pulses and rice are separated by sedimentation and decandation process. When we are adding water to the pulses, the pulses will settle down in the bottom of the beaker or a container, and water is gently poured out by the decandation method. Next one is filtration. Fruit juice with fruit pulp. Insoluble solids from a liquid mixture are separated using a filter or sieve. Next one, evaporation. Seawater containing salt or salt solution separated by evaporation method. Water evaporates on heating and leaves behind the salt particles. Next method is distillation. To get pure water from lake or impure water by distillation process. By collecting water vapor formed after evaporating, they are cooled to get pure water. Next one, churning. To separate cream from milk. This method used to separate cream from milk. On churning, lighter cream separates out from the heavier milk. Okay students, we completed this lesson. We will see next lesson in our next class. You have to read these all the topics in your textbook. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.